Hi there guys, Tom Quayle here. Hope everybody's doing very, very well out there indeed as ever. Today I'm checking out another product from the guys at Xvive. This is their U2 wireless guitar system. And it's a really great way, a very affordable way of getting into the wireless guitar world. So without further ado, let's check it out. Okay, so here is the wireless U2 system, and as with all guitar wireless systems, this consists of a transmitter, which I've got in my left hand here, and a receiver, which I've got in my right hand. Both units are pretty much identical in terms of design and operation, with this lovely sunburst finish that you can see. This is going to look really nice with kind of vintage gear as well as modern gear, which is quite nice. Both have a rotatable jack socket, which means it's going to fit in a wide variety of guitars. You can see me actually plugging this into some of my guitars right now, and I had no issues with anything. Even the recessed AZ, Ibanez AZ and Gem guitars, the jack sockets on the back of those. However, my Ibanez S guitar I did have some issues with. So it's worth noting if you have a front mounted jack socket, it may not fit your guitar because of these large shoulders that are going on here across this rotating jack socket. So something to be aware of. That actually was the only issue I had with the U2 system in terms of fitting it to any of my guitars. And once you have it fitted, you can rotate this top section across, and there is actually a rubberized, if I just hold this a little bit closer, a rubberized section on there that allows you to get that right up against your guitar so it's out the way, so you've got no danger of snapping off this particular part of the jack socket just here, which is quite nice. Now, staying at this closer distance, you can see here we've got a couple of buttons on the top. We've got a channel button and an on button, and then two LEDs on the top here. And that's it in terms of operation. It's dead easy. So we switch it on and off like that. You saw it flash once there. That tells us that we're on channel 1. If I want to change the channel, there's up to 4 available channels across the 2.4 gigahertz band here that allow me to send and use up to 4 different wireless U2 systems on the same stage if I want to. Changing channels is as simple as pressing the channel button, and it will basically flash the number of times to tell me which channel on. So 2 flashes for channel 2, 3 flashes for channel 3, so on and so forth. Very, very straightforward indeed. Very good quality construction on here, and you can see that USB socket on there. Now both units have that USB socket for charging to keep up to 5 hours of battery life on a standard usage if you're using up to the 70 feet of range that's available for both these units. So that is great, and I've found the battery life is really, really useful and does last up to around that 5 hour mark. I've certainly been testing these a lot over the past month and a half around the sort of Christmas, New Year period. Now the other thing to note is that they do give you a single USB cable to charge both of these at the same time from a single USB socket, which is awesome. And if you give them a good 15 minutes charge, that's going to give you 30 minutes. So you're basically doubling up roughly your charge time to the number of hours or minutes that you're going to get from these units in a live use, which is great. They've got great sound quality, so it's 20 hertz up to 20 kilohertz. So you've got the full audio range there in terms of frequency response, which is really, really nice. And yeah, the sound quality is really great. We'll compare that shortly. And in terms of latency, obviously it's a wireless unit, so you are introducing latency, but it's sub 6 milliseconds quoted in the specs. Now we're going to test the latency. I'm just going to show it to you versus a wireless connection, and I'll show you how I'm going to actually do that shortly. But to me, it just feels like a wired connection. I can hardly feel, if any, difference at all there. You know, when I'm actually playing, it just feels like playing through a wired connection to me, so no problems whatsoever. So let's plug these in. We're going to do a sound test first between a wired connection and the wireless connection, so you guys can hear any differences if there are any, and then we're going to test the latency as well, and I want to show you the wireless range too. So let's check that out now. Okay, so the first thing here is a sound quality check, testing the difference between, if there is any, between the wireless signal from the U2 and a wired traditional signal. I've got my Ibanez TQM1 here, which has got the U2 plugged into it right now, which is then connected to my pedal board wirelessly. And I'm running through a 1+ dual fusion channel 1, which is then going into a Laney Lionheart 2x12 combo, which is set completely clean, and then through a universal audio aux in order that I can record it into my DAW for you. So let's check out the wired signal first on the bridge pickup. I'll try and play something roughly similar so you guys can make some conclusions for yourself. Okay guys, so sorry for the change in camera and audio quality. I'm actually using my iPhone for this because I want to do a range test, so I'm going to move around in my house to a different room just to show you the kind of range you can get with this. So the amp is cranked in the room. If I just show you here I am in the room. I'm plugged into the pedal board down there. Here's all the gear. And then obviously we've got the wireless set up there. Let's open the door and go to a different room. So I'm going to go a fair distance, go up the stairs. There we go. Go up the stairs here into my spare bedroom, which has got very little in it except for a bed, but it's a decent distance away from the previous room in the attic. And as I say, the amp is absolutely cranked. Now I have a music stand set up here. Whoops. So hopefully you guys, if I do this, you can still see me. So there we go, plugged in. And from this range, still working perfectly. So the next test that I want to do here is based on that claim of sub 6 millisecond latency that's going on here. And again, when I play, I'm not feeling any discernible latency. Now the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to use the Strymon Big Sky on my pedal board. And the reason I'm doing that is because it's got stereo outputs. So I'm going to plug my guitar wired with a cable into the input of the Big Sky on its own on the pedal board. I'm not using any other pedals, and it's in its analog bypass mode. So I'm not actually using the pedal at all to do anything except split the mono signal from my guitar into left and right stereo at exactly the same volume. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to hardwire the left output to input 1 on my audio interface, and I'm going to use the U2. I'm going to plug the transmitter into the right output of the Big Sky, and that's going to wirelessly transmit the signal, exactly the same signal that I'm sending on the left channel, but obviously wirelessly this time to the receiver, which is plugged into the right input on my audio interface. Now in this way, both sides of the audio interface are receiving exactly the same signal, because I'm going to play this in live, so they're receiving exactly the same signal that's being split via that mono input on the Big Sky. And because they're bypassed, they are literally exactly the same signal, i.e. the reverb is bypassed, so you'll not hear any reverb. So effectively I'm DIing the same signal into my audio interface twice, but introducing the latency of this wireless system. Then I'm going to go into Studio One and show you that latency on the actual waveform. So I've already done the recording. Let's check out Studio One now, and I'll show you that millisecond based latency that we've got in those waveforms. So I'm in Studio One here, as you can see, and on the top here, this waveform is the wired connection, and the bottom waveform is the wireless connection. Now, at first glance, they look pretty similar. You wouldn't think there was any latency there at all. But what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to crank up the waveform resolution so we can see this a little bit better. And I'm going to zoom in on this point just here, where I've made these two markers. Okay, now, if I just center this, hopefully you guys can see that, if I just zoom out a little bit, we've got the same waveform here going on in two different places. Now this transient here is exactly the same as this transient just here, and you can see above I've made a marker number 3 for this transient and marker number 4 for this transient. So we can see there is some latency here. This wired signal, the one at the top here, is appearing earlier than the wireless signal, which makes perfect sense because it's obviously got to be sent wirelessly. But how much latency is there? Is the sub 6 millisecond latency accurate? Well, what we can do if we zoom in here is we can actually get a millisecond reading on this bar at the top. So we can look at the minutes, seconds and milliseconds timing of where we are within this DAW project. Now you can see here where marker 3 is. We're within this 783rd millisecond of the 22nd second. So marker 3, let's say it's 783 and a bit. Okay, let's count through until we get to marker 4. So we've got 783, 784, 785, 786, 787, 788, and that they were roughly starting around the same time within that millisecond difference is 5 milliseconds. From this peak here, this transient, to this peak here, or this transient here, 5 milliseconds, which of course is below Xvive's quoted 6 millisecond latency that they have on the packaging. So that's a totally accurate claim that they've got going on there. Now, what does this mean in real terms? Well, for the average user, there is pretty much no way that you're going to notice 5 milliseconds of latency. 5 milliseconds is around the same time in terms of latency figures that you would find from something like a quad cortex, an Xvive, a Helix. Once the signal has been, even though it's connected wire, a wired signal, once the signal has been converted through the analog to digital converters, gone through the DSP, and then come back out again and converted from digital back to analog, you're talking about 5 millisecond latency. So if you can stand to play through something like a Helix or a quad cortex or an Xvive, then you'll be totally fine with the Xvive U2 system. And as you can see here, as I mentioned, their latency claims are absolutely on the money. So there we have it, guys. That is a rundown and demo of the Xvive U2 wireless system. I'm very impressed with these units. I think they're a really good price, very nicely made. They look good as well, and they sound great. And that latency that they've quoted obviously is accurate as well. So there's not really anything to complain about, unless of course you're using top-mounted jacks that could cause somewhat of an issue for these units themselves. Now, the only other thing to mention in terms of conclusion is that 2.4 gigahertz band at certain venues, and depending on how many devices there are that utilize that 2.4 gigahertz band, especially if people are using older wireless technology that's not been upgraded to the 5 gigahertz band. Of course, just like with every other 2.4 gigahertz wireless unit on the market, you might have some issues, and it's impossible to know from venue to venue. So if you are looking for the highest end, most professional units that will never drop out regardless of the unit, you do need to spend more money. But as an affordable solution for the stage and studio, these are a really fantastic option that have really, really impressed me. So as usual, guys, if you check the link in the description below, you can go across to Xvive's website to check out more on the U2. They're available at all the kind of good online retailers, of course. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons below as ever. And of course, you've got to hit that bell notification icon if you want to be notified every time I upload a video. If you want to support me, check out the links in the description below. Well, you'll find all of my lesson content on my website on legato, improvisation, harmony, all sorts of cool things that will help me to make more video content just like this. All right, guys, thanks for watching. My name's Tom Quayle. Thanks for Xvive for sending the U2 across for me to check out, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.